Hey everyone, Cody Menz here with another video going into a new unreleased tank, currently for World of Tanks PC as of the 1.22.1 update. This hasn't been released yet, and it's been in the game files for several updates to where we could see this at some point at the end of 2023 here, or more likely going into 2024 if it's not in the holiday ops, basically boxes. Now, this is a tier 8 American premium tank destroyer, the XM66F. This tank, going off of what Wargaming has in the client for their historical reference, it's a late 1950s project that was developed as an alternate to gun launcher armed vehicles, basically being a more traditional tank, for a time where it was moving away from that. The main feature was the placement of the whole crew within the turret, since this tank is basically all turret and less tank, and it grants the most protection to the crew and reduces the frontal projection area. However, the project was never developed further and they canceled it. Now, this tank is kind of weird. It's very small, petite, for a tank. It kind of reminds me of like a downsized, like Italian tank destroyer, like the Vipera, although very much does look like an American tank though, looking at the design. The feature of this tank is basically having 10 degrees of gun depression, moderate mobility, and really good armor, and that really strong, basically, turret. Now, the turret only goes 30 degrees, basically left or right, so it's not fully traversable. Looking at the armor, quick little look here, just on level ground, the armor is still decent, because it is pretty thick, 230 millimeters on a lot of the bits of the turret. And it does have, some cupola weak spots up top here, so a very small one here, and then this one's a bit larger on this side. But it does have as well kind of a flat bit of the turret as well here. That's notable. The main feature for its armor though is when you're going to be adding some angle to it to try to hide as much of this very small hole as possible. And with 10 degrees of gun depression, you're going to be able to hide pretty much all of it because it's very small and the gun basically is hanging off the front of the tank. It's not situated on the rear of the tank. So armor wise, it's pretty darn good. For a tier 8 TD, you're going to be able to hold down against things where are you going to be able to bounce like tons of like tier 10, tier 9 premium shots? Maybe, if they're hitting, not this side of your turret and especially not the cupolas. So this thing has a pretty good hold down playstyle. Now, getting into kind of a comparison here, it is honestly closest to the T28 prototype in my opinion. I threw these two Italian TDs in here just because like visually they look very similar. But these obviously are a little bit different because they have those auto loading guns. Now, compared to the T28 Proto, this tank, same damage, a little bit less pen for the standard round, a little bit less pen for the premium round as well. Getting into the turrets here, T28 Proto has a much better traverse arc versus the XM, which is very limited. It's actually worse than the Italian TDs. Gun depression, same across the board here, 10 degrees versus all of them. Better than the Protos though for gun elevation. Aiming time, decent, a little bit under 2 seconds. Accuracy, the same at 0.36. Where it does have a little bit more DPM, but honestly it's kind of splitting hairs. Like these tanks are very, very close for the gun. The main difference is this has less penetration, which is actually, even though it's not huge, it is definitely noticeable, dropping off 16 millimeters for your base round and even having less for the premium round. Now, hit points. Surprisingly, you have more hit points than the T28 Proto. I don't know how. I guess Wargaming decided to give it more hit points. The T28 Proto has kind of always had really low hit points though, even for a tank destroyer. Maybe it's because it's one of the older tank destroyers, for tier 8, but in any event it does beat it out for that, even though it's much smaller, which is, it doesn't always mean larger tanks with more HP, but it kind of, you know, in World of Tanks PC that happens. Now, mobility. It does have a higher top speed and a higher reverse speed, where this is closer, you know, to like say the SMB, where it is a little bit faster and specific power is better. This does have worse terrain resistance, which hurts a little bit, but it still is noticeably faster than the T28 Proto. So it wins out in mobility. So far you went out in hit points. Armor, I would say that this has better armor. If personally, to where Prototype has a little bit better hull armor, this has better, you know, like hull down armor, the where, you know, I guess like the XM could take more damage, you know, versus like lower tiers if you're not hull down, but I'd rather have the XM66F's armor versus the Prototype, because you can actually take shots when you're hull down, versus the Prototype, which has really weak turret sides, or the front of the turret essentially. But mobility wise, it is pretty significant that this is faster. And then V-range, kind of splitting hairs here, you know, it's basically better than the Italian tanks, but same as the T28 Proto. 380 is pretty good for a TD at tier 8. Stationary camo, a little bit worse than, you know, the Italians here. Better than the T28 Proto though. And then on the move, you know, is decent, but pretty much, you know, a little bit better than the Proto. I'm a little surprised that this wasn't better. It's not awful, but given the very small size of this, I thought it might have a little bit better camouflage. Overall though, like stat-wise, this seems like it's going to be a pretty solid tank. Doesn't look like it's going to, you know, ruffle too many feathers with being too good, too bad. The main thing is, yeah, it's just kind of quirky to where, sure, it does have 5 crew members, which is nice. You know, it's not some weird, like, you know, it's like one person doing the entire job type thing. But it's definitely, you know, are they going to sell it? Is it going to be part of an event, you know, thrown in for like loot boxes alongside other tanks? Because it's very different from anything that we have for other American TDs that, you know, like what's the angle for this? Because I think people are definitely going to like playing this because it does fit like that American kind of jack of all trades tank, hold down. So it'll fit right in, but it's definitely, it feels kind of odd, you know, looking at, say, like the TL7, you know, that got introduced, you know, not too long ago, and there's another tier 9 American TD kind of hanging out there that's very different from tech tree tanks. So it seems like Wargaming, it's kind of a trend with them releasing, I guess, some of the more, I guess, quirkier American designs that never saw the light of day, which I'm all for, as long as they're like this, to where this seems like it'll honestly perform perfectly fine. It's not going to suck. It's not going to be broken. So I'm all for it. But anyway, thanks for watching this, and, you know, hope to see you in another video sometime soon, and have a good one. See ya.